All right, hello everybody. Welcome to Unbiased America Live. We have our regular panel, Grant in the green shirt over here, Grant Phillips from the Modern Libertarian, who came out with some good stuff on the clock kid, right, Grant?
Yeah,
that was
pretty last week. Yeah,
that was really good. Yeah,
thank you.
I shared it on the Analytical Conservative. We have Kevin Ryan of Unbiased America. Myself, Will Riccadella of the Analytical Conservative and Unbiased America, and our guest is the former 2008 vice presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party, Wayne Allyn Root, who's also an entrepreneur, CEO. The list goes on, as you can see behind him. You got into sports betting, a million other things. I was reading your book. I can't keep track of all the things you got into. The book is called The Power of Relentless. It's a good book. What was the impetus for you to write this book? I mean, the message is a little different than your other books.
Well, listen, I give business speeches all over the world, and I give political speeches all over the country, and so people know me from all the political bestsellers I've written in the last 5 years, and I thought it was time to write a business book because Obama has so screwed up the economy that I thought we need all the help we can get, showing everyone how to make money in the midst of a Great Depression. That's what I call this, by the way, the Obama Great Depression. And I've been saying that for 7 long years now. And so many people, oh, things are great, the stock market's up. Really? So I just want everyone to understand, the Fed just decided they couldn't raise interest rates a quarter of a point above zero for the 55th straight time. Anyone who thinks that they're not panicking and we're not in the middle of a collapse and we're not on the edge of a cliff, they know it. I could just picture them in the Fed meeting, where they don't want to get you scared and they want to start a panic. They're screaming behind their padded walls that we are on the verge of death and that you can't even raise interest rates a quarter of a point above zero.
Right. But the economy's doing so well, they say. I mean, the labor. I mean, the what is it called? The BLS statistic. The employment rate's really going down. It's going in the right direction.
Yeah, pretty much every month you gain about 150,000 jobs, and during that same month, 500,000 people drop off the workforce, never to work again. And then even the 150, all 150, 100% of them are part-time jobs, cleaning toilet bowls, tending bar, and mowing lawns. It's the illegal immigrant from Mexico economy. There are no jobs for an American who just graduated college. None.
Right.
Zero.
And I hear, and to that point, and which might piss a couple people off, a lot of these STEM jobs that they're talking about, they're even giving visas for people from other countries to take these STEM jobs, while the unemployment rate for American citizens in the STEM fields is at 30%. So I'm lost on what's going on in the job market in that regard.
I think a typical STEM job, Will, is going to someone from China, India, or Russia. After all, that's where all the hacking is going on. So like someone who's good at science, technology, and math, head for where all the hackers are, China, India, and Russia.
Getting back to your book, there was some, it was kind of like a moving book, some of your stories. I mean, I got to say, the one about your mom at the beginning, on The Power of Relentless, The Power of Heart, that was a moving story. I mean...
You know what makes a moving story? It's real. Everything in my book really happened. And what's funny is I give events all over the world. At events all over the world, I give speeches, presentations, and I pepper them with videos. And people hear these stories, and it's one thing to hear the story or to read it in the book. It's another to see it on video. And so everything I talk about in my book, every one of those personal, emotional stories, I have a video to back it up and show people the moment it happened and the news story around it. And people really get very emotional. People get very blown away. People are shocked that someone can prove what he's talking about is real. And then you bring it home to them. They're like, holy crap, this stuff is real. It can be done.
Right. Right. And I mean, you bring this up in your book. It's the power of telling stories. I think you use a quote that facts tell, stories sell.
Yeah.
I mean, and you see it in your book.
About stories. And here's the thing, Will. If only the Republican Party would listen. Sales is all about telling stories. Facts don't sell you anything. And a great salesman is a great storyteller. And a great politician is a great salesman and a great showman. Politics is show business and sales, the perfect combination of those two. And Donald Trump doesn't know a single fact. He wouldn't know a fact if it hit him in the face. But he's a great storyteller. And after he tells his story, everybody's talking about it tomorrow morning at the water cooler. And so that's why Donald Trump's a great candidate. And that's why no one else recognized it but me. I mean, even Rick Amato, who's a big-time national conservative media guy, he did an interview with me on his podcast the other day, and he said, I interview Wayne once a month for the last year, and the only guy in the country who predicted the rise of Donald Trump was Wayne Root, and the only guy in the country when Hillary was up 65 points that said Hillary will never, underline, never in bold caps, ever get the nomination. Joe Biden will step in and get the nomination, was yours truly. So I've made some really interesting predictions, all because I understand salesmanship, and Bill Clinton was a great salesman. I may have disagreed with his politics, but a great
certainly
salesman, right? Hillary is the worst ever.
Too phony.
She's the nastiest woman ever.
Right.
And so she brings with her all the scandals of the Clintons and none of the personality of Bill. She's the worst of all worlds. She'd never get the nomination.
I want to do it. It's pretty funny. I'd like the New York attitude that just come out and say it. She's the nastiest woman ever. There's no beating around the bush, and Trump displays a lot of that too, which we'll get to later. And I also want to get to facts tell, sales sell a little later on, because we talk about this a lot on the show about the conservative message. But I wanted to get to the story about your daughter. It was very interesting. She was obviously a great student, and she was applying to different colleges, you know, some of the best colleges in the world, Harvard, Yale, Cal Berkeley, Princeton, you name it, she was applying to.
Stanford, my favorite.
Stanford. And I guess, you know, she got accepted to Yale and turned it down. And then here you are writing this book about the success, reaching for the stars, and you were wondering, why would you turn that down? And, you know, she actually kind of taught you a lesson and said, look, I want to go to Harvard. I don't want Yale. And it kind of woke you up. That was a really good story.
Well, don't forget, the moral to that story was that I said to her, "Are you out of your freaking mind? You
right?"
Because there was still 2 weeks to go for it was like March 15th, and on April 1st is acceptance day all over the country. You get a letter, email that day from your colleges saying you're in or you're not in. So it was 2 weeks to go, and she didn't know if she'd get into any of them. She was homeschooled, and I had no idea if a homeschooler could get into any Ivy League school. And she gets literally a call from the Yale fencing coach who says, I'm sending you, faxing you a likely letter. If you sign it and send it back, you're in 4 years at Yale. You know, likely letter is a sports signing letter for football players, basketball players. She was a fencer, one of the best in the country. So Yale offered her 4 years, and she turned it down. And I said, are you out of your freaking mind? And she said, Dad, don't I attend your events? And you're always telling people to aim for number one and don't ever accept anything less than number one. And Harvard is my number one choice. I'm going to wait. And I said, but they may say no, and then you've got nothing. And she waited, and 2 weeks later, 12 for 12 at all the best colleges in America, including the two I'd hoped for from the day she was born, Harvard and Stanford. And so she accepted Harvard, graduated last year, magna cum laude from Harvard University, and she's beautiful.
Wow.
And just got accepted for 2 years, full ride, full scholarship, 2-year master's degree in government and economics at the University of Hamburg in Germany, leaves for Germany in 2 weeks. She's a real bright kid.
Wow, I could barely get through undergrad poli-sci classes at Cal State Long Beach. Forget about that.
Listen, you and I both. I'm no student. I'm no intellectual, believe me.
You went to Columbia. You graduated from Columbia.
I did, but I spent my 4 years at Columbia chasing beautiful women in Manhattan and gambling on football games with bookmakers. So well, I was no great student, trust me.
I don't think it hurt you.
No, listen, the only thing college is for, in my opinion, is getting that sheepskin to hang behind your head for the rest of your life. It opens doors, and once you get in the door, it's up to you whether you're talented, whether you're successful, whether you're personable, whether you're a winner or not. But you don't learn anything in college that helps you in the real world. And by the way, based on the Pope's visit to Cuba and America, I don't think the Pope knows anything either. You know what makes you successful and smart? Get out in the real world and earn a paycheck. A priest can talk about religion, that's great. Talk about morality, that's great. Talk about your Catholicism, that's great. As soon as priests stray to economics and capitalism and income redistribution and climate change, they've lost me. So this idea that an intellectual knows anything about money is now destroyed with everyone at Harvard, all the professors, all the great thinkers like Obama, and now the Pope. They all prove intellectual firepower has nothing to do with understanding how to create jobs and create a good economy in the real world.
Right, I agree with that. And I want to move on to, I want to get into a little bit of politics here now, and I want to get to a line that you wrote in your book, which I found really, really good, and I don't know why anyone else hasn't said it yet. It's, you were talking about Israel and foreign policy, and Kevin just actually did a piece on this on Unbiased America on the inspections, but this has to do with it. You wrote, my recommendation to Israel's enemies, you were far better off studying the Jewish people and emulating them than fighting with them, because you'll never win. No one in history has ever defeated the Jewish people, and no one ever will. I found that quote fairly profound, and I've been studying a little bit of Thomas Sowell and his take on the economics of immigration and different groups of people and how they perform. and through culture they obtain human capital. And the Jews, wherever you watch the Jews, the Ottoman Empire, the United States of America, the Jews in Europe have always been successful wherever they've been. So you bring up a very profound point that rather than hating them, perhaps you should study their culture and how they are able to obtain this human capital in order to succeed. But let's get to also, not only are they a successful country, they're surrounded by people that hate them, that actually want to wipe them off the face of the earth. I don't understand. You went down this list of a myriad things that they do great in business, which I found somewhat shocking because I figured they have more of a socialistic economy. Can you explain kind of how Israel does so well in the business world and venture capital?
Yeah, actually, the three nations that lead the world in venture capital, not per capita, Will, pure dollars, number one in the world, of course, United States, no shock. Where's all the money in the world get invested? The United States. Number two, China. Where's all the money in the last 10 years get invested? China. And number three, Israel, a nation of 6 million people. It's absolutely amazing. And I think it just points to the fact that Jews are relentless and resilient and persistent and determined and tenacious. They're all the things that make up my book, The Power of Relentless. And that's why I think the key chapter in the book is about the Jewish people and how, you know, when you set fire to steel, it forges iron and it makes you super strong, you know. And I think that's what's happened over the years. The Jewish people is they've been attacked, they've been persecuted, they've been targeted, they've been raped, they've been enslaved, they've been murdered. You name robbed, you name the thing that's happened to them, and they've come out the other end mentally the strongest people in the world. I would argue in Israel, physically the strongest people in the world, pound for pound. The Israeli army, I believe, per capita is the strongest army in the world. You can't beat them. And so I think the Israeli people are a great symbol of what happens when you're not afraid to ask, and you're not afraid to sell, and you're not afraid to go into business, and you're not afraid to risk $100,000 or $1 million on your business, because all of that seems like child's play compared to running for your life from Adolf Hitler, you know, or from the Roman Empire, from being a slave. So I think sales starts to be an easy thing. Asking someone for $1 million on a business deal is no big deal when you're more worried about being murdered. And so the Jewish people got good at it. And before someone tells me, well, but I'm not Jewish, I can't do that, Wayne, I say, really? Well, look at China. China is trying specifically to emulate the Jewish people. A couple of years ago, of the 10 best-selling business books in China, 6 of them were How to Be Rich Like a Jew, How to Be Successful Like a Jew, How to Run a Business Like a Jew, Jewish Wisdom for the Ages. Those are the 6 most successful books in China. And so they're studying successful people. So my message to the Muslims of the world is, you know, if you can't beat them, join them.
Right.
All of you, stop attacking Jews and worrying about festering on Jews, and start reading up on them and learning how to be a little more successful in life. And pretty soon, there's no reason to be so angry anymore because you're making enough money. You don't have to protest. You don't have to kill. You don't have to be a terrorist. You know, the whole key to life is earn a living. And when you earn a living, you have no interest in killing anybody.
Yeah, the other thing about your book and the aforementioned facts about the book sales in China is in your book also. There's a lot of facts in here, too, that are very interesting to go along with your overall premises. And I like how you worked it all in. It was just well written. It was a page turner. I didn't want to stop reading it. I was in class today reading it again, you know, and much to the dismay of my teacher, who I generally argue with. He's a postmodern liberal, and he was wondering why I wasn't arguing with him in class today. And he saw I had your book under the desk, and he wasn't so happy.
Well, you can't get too mad because it's a business book. It's not a conservative book. This one
that's true.
A political book, so.
I want to get on to the Iran deal. We had Alan West on, and much to Libertarian chagrin, I disagree. I think the deal is awful. I don't know. I can't find anything good about the deal. I'm lost as where Libertarians find the deal. And you today, Kevin, came out with a piece on their inspections and their inspection process. And part of it is that they're actually doing their own inspections. Can you explain the work you did today?
Yeah. Well, the story came out today saying that there's a military base in northern Iran that people have wanted to get into to check out since 2003, and they finally, under the terms of the agreement, got in there today. And this is how it worked. It wasn't today. It was last week. This is how it worked. They got into the plant, and it had been completely changed. All the equipment was gone, because, of course, Iran knew that the inspectors were coming. So several buildings had been demolished, wiped off the entire complex, and there was evidence of heavy machinery all over the place, and there was no equipment in any of the buildings. So So of course the inspectors then at that point say, all right, well let's get some samples of the area so we can test them and decide whether or not there was ever any enrichment activity or any sort of illicit activity here. And what they had to do under the terms of the agreement was actually leave the facility, and the Iranians collected the samples themselves. Now, the one thing in defense of the inspectors that I'll say is they claimed that they were able to watch on closed circuit the actual collection of the samples, but they were not there, and the Iranian government made it very clear in announcing that fact afterwards that these samples were collected by Iranians themselves and then turned over to the inspectors. So who knows if they were real samples or not, but the fact is they knew that they were going to have to collect samples. They knew that the inspectors were coming a long time ago. They cleaned this place up, and it looks like going forward, that's the way the inspections are going to work.
Okay, I want to get Grant in here. Grant, who is far more libertarian, I think, in his philosophical approach than I, but far more pragmatic than most libertarians. And I want to get your view on the Iranian deal from a libertarian perspective, and what you've written at the Modern Libertarian, or the work that you've done. What is it that libertarians see about the deal? Is it basically that the United States has a lot to blame for should take some of the blame for the way Iran acts, or the destabilization of the Middle East?
Yeah, I think that's definitely why it's at least more acceptable in the libertarian circle, at least for what I see. But for me, I'm not really for it or against it. It's kind of a hard decision for me because on one hand, the terms of the agreement and the give and take of the agreement is terrible. Like the details of it, we don't get anything basically. And Iran, like you said, that like what happened last week, they get to inspect their own nuclear facilities. That's obviously not a good thing. But on the same hand, what's the chances that you're going to get a better deal? And if you do get a better deal, what's going to be in it? And I think that's something that's definitely worth considering. But at the same token, I do agree that our own actions in the Middle East have caused, maybe not recently for Iran, but at least in the last, like in the modern era, has been just complete instability on the Middle East. And I mean, I think we do have a large amount of blame to accept.
Okay, so you're struggling with the dichotomy here between this is a business deal, like if you're looking at it purely from a deal standpoint, and then the intertemporal foreign policy between the United States and the Middle East.
It's definitely a loss for Obama, but I don't think it's either a loss or a gain for our foreign policy in general. It's just kicking the can down the road is what it really is.
I'm going to get Wayne to respond to some of this, but first I want to introduce Matt Palumbo from Being Classically Liberal. Matt, Wayne, Matt.
Hey, Matt.
Also,
go ahead.
Wayne has a book called The Conscience of a Libertarian, and I think he can make a nice addition to his bookshelf with this. So, got my book plug in already.
There you go.
Mine, so I'm playing. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. But listen, I am libertarian on most social issues. I think government should stay out of the bedroom and stop bothering people's lives in the bedroom and the boardroom. But where I'm not that libertarian is when it comes to the Iran treaty. I'm actually the opposite of libertarian. Look, my dad was in World War II. My dad fought at Okinawa, which was probably the worst battle in the history of World War II, the most deadly battle, pound for pound. And then once they won it, the next step was the invasion of Japan. And he was waiting for the invasion of Japan, where he could have gone, and I wouldn't exist today. He would have been killed. The estimates were 1 million Americans would be killed invading Japan. Mm-hmm. So dropping 2 atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, as horrible as it was, saved 1 million American lives. And that's where I look at this Iran treaty, and I don't understand libertarian thinking at all. It's absurd. Well, the idea that, we should never have war, well, great, that's a great ideal, but it's not the way the world works. To prevent war, it's peace through strength. Iran only understands one thing, and that's that we're going to wipe them off the face of the earth. As soon as they realize that we're a bunch of idiots and nincompoops like Barack Obama, Iran laughs at us. Do you know what they're saying behind our back right now? Do you have any idea what they're saying about Barack Obama? Well, I'll assume this is a family show, so I won't tell you what the words they're using about Obama, but the reality is the words Putin uses about Obama, the words the Chinese leaders use about Obama, and the words the Iranian leaders if they spoke on the phone, it would be the definition of human, non-human language, filthy language, and racism combined. Okay, they think he's an idiot. They think he's a fool. They think our country's a fool. And as a businessman, a bad deal is worse than no deal. You're better off doing no deal at all.
Well, Wayne, the thing is, they draw this dichotomy again between, oh, it's either this deal or war. What? I don't understand that.
I never said anything about war. Matter of fact, I don't say war. I just say that there's no deal here. This deal's horrible. It's a worse deal than no deal. It makes us look like idiots. And here's the thing: we didn't even ask for the 4 American prisoners back. This is a joke. This is an absolute travesty, and it leads me to believe once again. I'm not going to be one of those guys who's going to tell you I think Obama's a Muslim. I think Obama's a Christian. I think he's the worst Christian in the history of the world. I think he's a Muslim sympathizer. I think his sympathies lie with helping Muslims take over the world. No matter whether he's a Muslim or not, his goal must be Muslims taking over the world, because everything he's done his entire presidency has helped Muslims all over the world and screwed over Christians all over the world. Well, this guy is the worst Christian ever lived.
Just to that point, let me bring up when he supported Mohammed Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt over supporting Mubarak, and then you have this al-Sisi in there who seems to be, for all intents and purposes, a really good man who's standing up against radical Islam, and I don't hear the president saying a word about it.
Although I don't know if I'd go so far as to say a good man. I don't know if there may not be any good men in the Middle East. They're more pro-American than any Muslim Brotherhood would ever be. They're probably killers, and they're probably, obviously they don't believe in freedom of speech, and they'll put you in jail for the wrong freedom of speech. I get that, but certainly they're much more pro-American, just as Mubarak was. And I say, the enemy that's closer to me is a better enemy than the enemy that hates me. Exactly. And so Mubarak was a bad guy, but he was our bad guy. And Morsi is a bad guy, but he's our bad guy. Whereas the Muslim Brotherhood, they supported the Nazis in World War II. Does that give you some idea of what you're dealing with? Right, and and then they out of the Muslim Brotherhood, you got Hamas. So and Hezbollah. Don't forget Hezbollah. Don't ignore Hezbollah.
Sure. Moving on, I want to get into some of the political field. Certainly, before we get into Trump, I want to bring up one of the issues that Trump really brought up and that we talk about a lot here, which is immigration. And was it last week, guys, that we had Tom Woods on? No, it was 2 weeks ago. We had Tom Woods on here, who is a dyed-in-the-wool libertarian. I'm sure you've heard of him. And he came on here, and he really, rather than giving the hardline libertarian standpoint, he kind of agreed, I think, Kevin, you would agree, with our standpoint, that just allowing people to come in across the border who we don't know who's coming here. A lot of them tend to collect welfare. There's really not, in my opinion, there's really not, as insofar as it relates to labor resource allocation, when you have price controls, insofar as it relates to the minimum wage, that this labor isn't really going to help anybody out in the long run, and that welfare really prices them out of the market, and the incentives to have a kid here is one of the problems. Where do you stand on immigration, and do you toe the libertarian viewpoint, or do you think you're a bit more pragmatic in that respect, Wayne?
You're asking me?
Well, yeah.
Listen, I left the Libertarian Party and went back to the GOP for only 3 reasons. Number one was that I realized that it was fruitless. You need a seat at the table of power in order to change the world and make things happen. And libertarians will never get elected because it's not a third-party country. We're a 2-party system. So I realized without getting elected, there's no point in fighting and wasting your energy. So I left for reason number one, because I want a seat at the table of power and I want to change the world. Libertarians can't do that. I'm sorry to say. It's not their fault. The system is bad.
Would you advise other libertarians to do that too?
I never make a judgment for others. I never want to say that. I have a lot of friends in the LP right now, and I don't want them to believe I'm urging people to leave the LP. You have to make your own decision. But that was the first reason I left. But the next 2 were libertarians are right on so many things, almost everything I agree with them on, except for 2. One is immigration and the border, and the other one is the Muslim issue. And I'm a big pro-Israel guy, and I believe that radical Muslims are the root of all problems in the world, and they're a disaster. We're going to have a war one of these days. It's going to be called World War III, and you better choose a side. It's going to be Christians and Jews against Muslims. And it's happening, and it's happening every day. And so libertarians don't get that at all, and they're on the wrong side. And on immigration, they are really on the wrong side. They're missing the boat. Because, of course, we should have a free movement of labor. Of course, in a wonderful, ideal world, that would be great. How about in a world where America is this greatest country in the world and the greatest economy in the world, and the entire world of freeloaders wants to come here and suck off our system and destroy us all and bankrupt us all. I mean, why not let in 600 million people? If the libertarian idea works, then theoretically, how about 6 billion? How about America goes from 300 million to 6 billion 300 million, and we let in everyone in the whole world who wants a free ride, a free education, and free healthcare, and then America's done, and I'm moving to the Cayman Islands. So it doesn't work. In theory, yeah. In reality, it can never work to have a border that's open and no wall there. There's got to be a wall and guards figuring out who's coming in and why they're coming in.
Before I get the panel to ask you some questions, do you get a ton of blowback from libertarians, perhaps in social media or via email or however, from a lot of your viewpoints?
I get blowback from everyone. Well, I get blowback from liberals. I get blowback from socialists and Marxists. I get blowback from libertarians. And here's the worst one of all. I get lots of blowback from rhino establishment.
Oh, yeah.
So they don't agree with me either. Who cares? I look at public opinion polls, and by the way, I don't base any of my views on polls. I believe what I believe. Then I go look at the poll and see how many people agree with me. I don't change my view for them. I'm not a typical politician who sticks his finger in the air. And guess what? I'm in the majority on almost every single issue. Name an issue, and the majority of Americans is got the same view as me. So I don't know. For a guy who gets attacked by libertarians, by establishment Republicans, and by liberals, I don't know. I seem to be in the majority.
Yeah, you seem to be doing something right. I think all of us on this panel here get attacked by all the same people. So I even Grant, I know, gets attacked by libertarians for sure.
Libertarians live to attack others, so don't worry about it. That was the other thing about the Libertarian Party. It was just ridiculous. I actually said out loud, at a major Libertarian event, do you people eat your young? I mean, I've never seen a group of people like this. Can't you ever be friendly with anybody? Do you have to attack your own so viciously that you chase them away and they're never there again? And you just happen to chase away everyone who's got a checkbook. So the Libertarian Party is the brokest party I've ever seen. Anyone with a checkbook gets offended and runs away and joins the Republican Party and starts writing $10,000 checks to the GOP. And they could have done that for the Libertarian Party if you just learned to play nice. Libertarians need to learn to play nice.
I agree. And Austin Peterson, who's running for who's threw his hat into the Libertarian race, I sent him a message today, like, good luck. I know these people are going to badmouth you, trash you. You're going to get into so many fights. I was like, it takes guts to do what you're doing. And I said, kudos to you. And if you need any help, ask, Like,
and I know Austin very well. Tell him I said hi.
I will. Grant, do you have any questions for Wayne?
Yeah, I want to go back to what you said about building a wall. This is how I view it. I'm sure that you agree with me that the government can't really do anything competently, from issuing driver's licenses to running the Medicare system.
Correct.
So when I hear you say, let's build a wall, I'm imagining the federal government mobilizing union labor and God knows how many of their own self-imposed regulations along with it to build this wall. And then I'm thinking the cost to maintain that wall and man that wall for decades to come, and I don't really see how that financially makes sense, how that plays out. Now, is that a cost benefit for you to think of? All right, well, welfare programs aside, I agree with you regarding the welfare programs, but in an ideal world, would you still want that wall? If there was no welfare state the way we have it now, do you think that it would still be necessary to do that?
Well, I mean, my first fear is certainly that we're going bankrupt, and that wall, the lack of a wall and the lack of anything at that border, it's completely open and lawless, is allowing massive amounts of illegals to come in who want welfare, massive amounts of drugs to come in, and massive amounts of terrorists to come in. So it's all three of those. And it's not just welfare costs, it's prison costs, court costs, police costs. In California, it's $10 billion a year is the cost of illegals in just, not welfare, just police, court, and prison costs. So it's a lot of different things, but my answer is pretty simple. You don't need a physical wall. I don't know why none of the candidates are talking about this. Most libertarians would agree that Obama has been terrible on the issue of human rights and using drones to fly around the Middle East and murder people without giving them a trial, right? I mean, I think all libertarians agree you deserve a trial, and if a drone just shoots you to death with a bomb, you never got a trial. Well, we have 30,000 drones in the Middle East. Can't we bring some of them home to patrol the border? It's dirt cheap. All you need is drones to patrol that border and have cameras on them and report back to the Border Patrol and within seconds of a person violating American space, the drone reports it, and the Border Patrol gets there, and the person is sent back across the border. So I wouldn't really spend the money to build a wall. We don't need it anymore. The days for that are over. When I say build a wall, I mean a virtual wall with drone technology.
Now, see, my response to that as a libertarian is immediately I hear government overreach. I mean, I'm thinking civil liberties violations. I mean, if they have some sort of drone program software that can track immigrants from the sky, I mean, how long is it before they start using that domestically? I mean, they already don't care about the Fourth Amendment whatsoever, so what's to prevent that overreach? And when we get to this kind, I see the snowball effect happening, you know?
My answer, this is Grant, right, Grant?
Yeah.
Yeah, my answer, Grant, is that they are already using it against us. First of all, I know the Obama administration hates my guts. I'm one of his biggest critics in the country. I've done 8,000 media interviews in the last 7 years, 8,000 plus in 7 years. All of them where I rip Obama to shreds. He sicked the IRS on me and tried to destroy me. It was the worst attack my accountants or law firms had ever seen in their lives. There's no question Obama hates my guts. So I just assume at this moment, every word I say, every word I type on email, every text, every phone call, every cell phone, everything I do is being tracked and being watched. And I know that, and I'm careful what I say. The government's using all the technology against us now anyway, so why are you worried about them using it against a bunch of foreigners whose only goal is to come to America, replace American labor, and take American welfare checks, stick their kids in American schools and ruin our schools, make the #1 expense at schools English as a second language, get free lunches and breakfast at school because they can't even manage to make their kids breakfast or lunch. They think that's government's responsibility, free health care. They're bankrupting America. See, so I'm a libertarian, but I'm a pro-American libertarian. I don't give a crap about the rest of the world. If I'm president, my only job is protecting America and Americans, and the rest of the world, they don't bother me much. My job isn't to worry about their civil rights. My job's only to worry about your civil rights, Grant. I do care about yours. I care about Will's. I care about mine and my kids. I don't care about a Mexican crossing a border. That's his problem. I'd have to be careful what I do to them, but I certainly would like to protect ours.
Right. And just in response to Grant's initial question about and Trump's getting bashed for this, talking about building a wall. Well, we can look at Israel for a blueprint for that. They built the wall, and what happened? And it worked. It was a major success. I think that the suicide bombing went down 99%.
Correct.
So,
no, it works. There's no question. You can keep people out with a wall. It's a fact. And I think it's a virtual wall. But if you are going to build a wall, going back to Grant's question how expensive it is, I would use prison labor and illegal aliens to build it. So it wouldn't cost that much anyway.
Right.
I wouldn't hire union labor.
But yeah, the federal government isn't competent. Dispense this duty to the states on the border, and they'll do it. Trust me, they'll do it. Arizona would have done it, but the federal government taxed them.
But I agree with Grant and all libertarians that the government is very bad at everything it does. Everything. It's incompetent. Doesn't know what it's doing. How about the fact that today it came out 6.5 million IDs have been stolen. You know, basically your information, your Social Security number from the government. It's now up to 6.5 million. Now, if I was a private sector CEO like Target, and I announced that there was a breach of all the credit cards in my system, first of all, my stock price gets cut by 90%, so I lose my whole net worth as the CEO of the company. Then I have massive shareholder lawsuits. Then I have consumer organizations and consumer commissions for the government coming after me. I might even face criminal prosecution. My life is ruined. But when the government allows hackers to steal 6 million IDs, guess what will happen to the government officials responsible? Nothing.
Nothing. Yep. Exactly. Kevin.
There's actually a really great piece up on the status right now about the cost of cybersecurity. The federal government, they're ages behind their cybersecurity, and it actually costs taxpayers like billions a year because they get all these little cyber attacks that I didn't know happened like all the time.
Well, look at the website for Obamacare, Grant.
They just all the time.
What did they spend $1 billion on building and then fixing a broken website? And I mean, nobody in the history of the world has ever spent $1 billion on a website. It's the most ludicrous number ever. And who did the money go to, by the way? It went to Michelle Obama's Princeton black alumni classmate. And I don't mean that I'm commenting on her being black. I mean, that was the name of the organization they belonged to together, the Princeton Black Alumni Association. That was her classmate, and she gave the money to her foreign company. I mean, if you were a Republican, you couldn't get away with any of this. You know what that's called? That's called fraud. You're giving taxpayer money, $1 billion, to a foreign company. There's no one in America that could have built the website. You got overcharged. Then it was built wrong. It was broken for the first day. And then you gave it to your classmate? That's called fraud, man. That's called bribery.
I want to get to Kevin now. Kevin, do you have any questions for?
Oh yeah. You know, I think, Wayne, of all the people we've had on the show, I have more questions for you than any of them. You have your fingers in so many different pies, and there's so much I can talk to you about. But I have a couple that I really want to hear about. A while ago, a friend of mine told me something that has stood the test of time, and this relates to Donald Trump. He said, if you look at the general election, the person who wins is always the one that you'd rather sit down and have a drink with. And ever since he said that, I've paid attention to the general elections, and it's basically been true every time. I mean, I think Donald Trump is that person. I don't know if he's going to make it to the general election, but I certainly know if he does, he's the person I think we'd all want to sit down and have a drink with. And he's definitely the most interesting candidate out there. And I know that you have, that you guys have a good relationship. And I just want to get your take on Don and whether you think he's got a shot to win this election, and how is he doing what he's doing right? How is he getting away with a lot of things he's getting away with?
Well, I think the reason he's getting away with it, Kevin, is for the reasons I pointed out back in April when he didn't declare until June, and in April was when I first met Donald. He sent me an email telling me he loved the article I wrote about him. I wrote an article that called him the Bulworth of 2016. And if you remember the movie Bulworth, it was Warren Beatty in 1998. Yeah. I'm dating myself now, 1998. And Warren Beatty played a Democratic, ironically, Democrat U.S. Senator from California who was suicidal. So he no longer cared what he said. So he just said whatever the hell he wanted to, and he won the election. He offended everyone. You know, he was at a black church, and they said, how come you don't care about us once the election's over? And he said, because you're poor. And if you don't give me money, I don't give a crap about you. And you think they hate him, and they loved him. They gave him a standing ovation because he was the first guy who ever walked in their church and told them the truth. And I said, if we could ever get someone like that, I think he'd win the election. And the only other person I know like that is me. I always say whatever is on my mind, and that's probably how I went from a nobody who'd never run for office to a guy who won the Libertarian vice presidential nomination on my first try in politics. I just say whatever's on my mind. I tell the truth. I'm honest. I'm a straight shooter. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, I'll argue with you, and hopefully I can change your mind. If not, next. And Donald is that kind of guy, and I thought he'd be great, and I was right. Except I underplayed it. He's like Bulworth on steroids. He's Bulworth times 10. Even I never imagined you could get away with the things he said about Megyn Kelly and John McCain, and the list is long. There's been so many of them. It's unbelievable. And Carly Fiorina, that face. I mean, it's kind of amazing. I keep telling him not to do that. You don't need to do that. You need to be honest about the issues. You don't need to be honest about someone's face. You don't need to crack on a woman's face. There's no reason to do that, and there's no reason to make enemies with Fox News. But I think he realizes that it's TMZ Nation. And what I mean by that is TMZ, the gossip website. You know, the more outrageous and controversial you are in America today, the more people tune in and they talk about you, and then you become famous just for being famous. And Donald Trump is the representation of that, and I guess he gets it. He's even a step further than me. I was proud. I predicted how he'd do it, but even I didn't realize you could crack on someone's face, and instead of going down the polls, go up. I mean, I didn't realize you could do that. But Donald's got it all down, man. It's all about celebrity, and it's all about being controversial, and it works. And so more power to him. As long as all that other stuff that I don't like and I don't care about, as long as that gets him elected, and then once he's elected, he's a man of the people and he does the right thing, saves the American economy and saves capitalism, then I say go ahead and crack on Carly's face. I don't care.
Kevin, go ahead. I'm sure you have more questions.
I do. I have one more question. You talked about your daughter, who is an incredible scholar and has been very successful. She was homeschooled, and I've done some research and some articles about homeschooling, and they certainly, I think that homeschooled students rise to the top. What is it about homeschooling, in your opinion, that produces great talent, great students? I mean, you obviously produced one of the great homeschooled students in America.
And a real libertarian, much more of a pure libertarian than I am, much more like many of you that I'm talking to right now. I mean, she just spent the summer as an intern at the Cato Institute in Washington, D.C., and she's a real libertarian. She's a great girl, and I'm very proud that we raised her. And I think that the school systems are horrible, and they dumb down the kids. And I think when you hang out with your mom and dad, you're not being dumbed down. And I think that you are who you hang out with, and you know, if you're around your kid 9 hours a day, they'll tend to be like you. And if you're smart, they'll be smart. And if you question authority, they'll question authority. And if you send them to somewhere else 9 hours a day, where all the people, not only the teachers, but all the students, everyone they're hanging out with, their whole thing in life is they've been so banged down by life. You know, by the time you take a job as a teacher, you've been so banged down by life. Maybe you tried 5 other careers, they didn't work, and now you became a teacher and you're accepting $30,000 a year, and you've got all kinds of bosses telling you what to do. You've got your principal, you got your division head, you've got your board of elections supervisor. You take orders all day long, and you can't say, you're never your own person in that classroom. So how could you teach kids to be their own person and to question authority when you don't question authority? Teachers don't question authority. They're Democrats. They don't know anything about questioning authority. They go along with whatever government wants. So your kids aren't learning from anybody that's ever going to teach them how to be a leader instead of how to be a follower. The only thing you learn in a public school is how to say, would you like ketchup and salt with that French fries and that shake, sir? I know I'm harsh, but that's what they're turning out. That's the reality, is order takers. And I don't want any of my kids to ever be an order taker. And so I've taught my kids to be leaders and to ask questions and to question authority. And the result is, you know, sometimes I don't even like the result. My daughter, who's brilliant, much smarter than me, much more libertarian than me, she's always questioning me and telling me what I'm saying is wrong. But it goes along with creating a good adult who will be a good citizen and a good American, I think.
You know, Wayne, playing off the would you like salt or ketchup with those fries comment, I did actually have a history professor who taught us all once how to order a cheesesteak at Pat's in Philly. So we did learn more than just the fries and ketchup.
I'm really proud that he was into it.
Yeah.
That was great.
He was very influential.
Maddie, do you have any questions for Wayne?
I always say it's the friends.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Wayne.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying it's the friends you keep in life. That it's not just the teacher's fault. It's the friends you keep in life that determine how successful you'll be. And you don't meet a lot of great people at school, you know? A lot of times you meet people who do drugs and who drink too much and who get pregnant at the age of 15. And you learn a lot of bad habits at school. And when my kids are in my house, they're not learning any bad habits. They're being supervised by me and my wife, so they're learning good habits. So all of those things play into it, you know, how you create good kids and why homeschooling works. And last but not least, I was also going to mention, I think education all comes down to 2 parents that give a damn, a mom and a dad that really care. And I think in public schools, you have a lot of kids that don't have a mom and dad in the school. They don't have it. But in homeschooling, it's always a mom and dad at home together. So it works. That's it. I think that's the reason homeschooling works.
Okay. I want to get to a little bit more on Trump. And we talked about this a bit off air. I think, you know, where we grew up, you grew up an hour and 20 minutes from where I grew up, if that. I think it's yeah. I'll give me 1 sec, Matt, and I'll get you into this. It's that New York kind of like where you grew up, where my mother asked me, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And I couldn't. I think in New York you can't really beat around the bush. They want an answer. Or what do you feel about this? And if you try to evade the question, everyone's looking at you. You know, why is this guy? You answer the question when somebody asks you something, you know. And I think Trump and you have that a lot, where you're just asking you're answering the question directly, what you're thinking, and a lot of people may be thinking the same thing. And these people that are thinking the same thing will sometimes criticize you for coming out and saying it. And I think Trump gets a lot of blowback that way, and I think people generally from New York, and I've been all over the country, generally 50% of the people will really like that, and the other 50% will really hate that.
Yeah, I still don't know how Hillary was a senator from New York.
Well, I could see that.
No, New York's very liberal. It's very liberal. She was elected because she had a famous name. By the way, celebrity sells, and name recognition is everything, brand name. And Clinton is a huge name, so she became the senator on the strength of her name, and a very liberal state and a very majority state, which means it leans Democrats. I mean, for all those reasons, Republicans have a hard time getting elected in either California or New York. But I wanted to add, Will, that New Yorkers aren't just people that learn to tell the truth and tell it like it is. We're also people that understand that someone's pissing on you and they say it's raining, It's not really raining. And Barack Obama is pissing on the United States of America and all people that earn money and all people that work hard and have work ethic. And it's not raining, folks. This isn't a thunderstorm. It's Barack Obama, and he's insulting every one of us. As an example, you didn't build that. The single most insulting thing ever said in the history of American politics, and the media let him get away with it and made it like it was no big deal. The IRS attack, going after critics of the president. Richard Nixon did it to a few people. He was hounded out of office.
Right.
Obama did it to steal the entire 2012 election. Went after every Tea Party group, every conservative group, every pro-gun group, every pro-Israel group, every pro-Constitution group, and specific critics like me tried to ruin our lives. Barack Obama, I hope you're watching, Barack, he should be in a jail cell.
So do I.
Until he's in a jail cell.
Me too.
I agree with you. I do hope he's watching.
That's so bad.
We're going to try to get him on.
Yeah.
My guess is he's not watching, but Valerie Jarrett is watching. She's watching everything.
That would be good for
The NSA is watching.
Yeah.
Maddie, you wanted to ask a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I saw you on Stossel a while ago, and you were talking. I think you were talking about your book, The Murder of the Middle Class, and I think you cited the stat that since the 70s, wages have stagnated despite productivity increases, and I guess I kind of thought it was interesting because it's usually I see liberals making that argument, and usually the narrative is, Reagan cut taxes, unions have declined, and those are the reasons why. I think Kevin and Will both contributed to a video that my friend Jay and I created where we were examining that claim, and basically we argued that it's only true that wages have diverged from productivity if you don't include benefits. So in other words, because healthcare costs have increased so much, people are getting a greater proportion of their income in healthcare. And also we argued the CPI has been overestimating inflation. So we argued that there is a greater link than some people have thought there was. So I'm just kind of curious, like from a conservative or libertarian perspective, what's the story behind wage stagnation, if it were to exist? And I don't know, because I usually hear from liberals, so I was a bit confused.
Yeah, listen, I think that conservative Tea Partiers have joined forces on a couple of issues with that Occupy Wall Street movement. Not that I like that movement. I'm not a fan of socialism or Marxism, and I can't stand Occupy Wall Street, but they're right on a couple of issues. And my point of the murder of the middle class is there's a conspiracy in this country. It's liberals who want to tax you to death, and it's corporations who want to keep you down while they make all the money and steal all the money from the taxpayers. And a lot of those corporations are friends of the conservative movement, or I should say the Republican Party, an establishment of the Republican Party. I'm not a fan. I'm not a traditional conservative because I'm a man who's fighting for the middle class. I'm not fighting for Warren Buffett and Donald Trump. I'm fighting for small business owners who make $150,000, $250,000 a year and are struggling right now to survive because their income is down by 50% from 5 years ago, and their bills are substantially up. You said a minute ago, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you said that CPI is overestimated, inflation's overestimated. I'm not sure what you're talking about. I know the only things that matter in my life that make up the bulk of what my bills are either mortgage or rent, which are the highest they've ever been, taxes, which are the highest they've ever been in my lifetime by far, and health insurance, the highest it's ever been by far, and electric bills, the highest they've ever been by far, and grocery bills, the highest they've ever been. Meat, chicken, poultry, fish, all dramatically higher. Eggs, tripled. Everything is up because of the costs of trucking it, and electricity, and bills, and taxes, and health insurance, not on you, but on the supermarket and its employees, and the trucking company, and the farmer. Everything is sky high, and all the things I just named are taken out of the inflation index so they don't register. So I think we are having horrible inflation. I think we have hyperinflation right now. I think inflation is somewhere between 10 and 12%. It is massive, and paychecks are going nowhere. I don't know how middle-class people are even surviving. I think they're living on credit cards, and they're all broke, and if God forbid there's a stock market crash and their retirement funds are wiped out, this entire country is done. And I think that's coming soon. So I think we got big problems. I know my own life, guys. I'm supposedly a wealthy guy according to Obama, but I'm certainly no Donald Trump wealthy. I'm a wealthy small businessman by those standards, and I can't keep up with the bills. The cost of college for my daughter at Harvard, and the cost of my electric bills, and the cost of my health insurance, sky high. And I just saw an article at my favorite website, zerohedge.com, and they said the cost of rent versus income is the highest it's ever been in the history of America. So to say there's no inflation, the middle class is being destroyed. It's just not true. You can't make enough money to pay all the bills, what I'm trying to say.
Okay, yeah. I guess my argument's more of a technical thing. It's basically the argument is that CPI overestimates inflation relative to other inflation measurements due to substitution bias, and it might be a very small amount, maybe 0.5% a year, but cumulatively over 40, 50 years, it could cause a huge overstatement or understatement. But I guess I'll move on to the next topic.
What I would argue is that CPI doesn't include any of the basic staples that make up most of a person's budget in the United States of America.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely
include food. It doesn't include energy costs. So it's not including the things that matter that eat up our whole budget.
Okay. Yeah, I don't honestly. Admittedly, I don't know as much about like energy costs and all.
Did he just get booted?
But I remember called The Two Income Trap, and she was talking about how much I guess the cost of home ownership has gone up since the 70s. But when I looked into like home sizes, I think like the average home size has increased well over 50 or 60% since the 70s. So I think one of the reasons, at least with housing, is homes are getting bigger, so that's why housing costs more. But with respect to energy and some of the other things you listed, I'm not as sure, to be honest. So you might be right in that regard.
The other thing I would say is that I'm not an intellectual guy. I'm just a gut instinct guy, and I'm just telling you, everyone I know, and my friends aren't poor, and my friends really aren't middle class. My friends are graduated college and have always made $250,000 a year or more owning a business. Architecture firm, law firm, medical firm, accountant, CPA, stockbroker. Those are my buddies. Own 3 restaurants, own 2 dry cleaners, own 3 gas stations. That's my crowd. And we're all in major trouble. We're dying. We're dying out here, and we're scared to death. We don't know how we're making payrolls. We don't know how we're surviving. We don't know how we're putting our kids through college 5 years from now. We don't know whether we can even live in America 5 years from now. Another Obama gets elected in 2016. It's all over. I think all of us need to leave this country. That's how bad it is. That's what all my friends are saying. That's not what Wayne Root's saying. That's what everyone I know is saying. And my group pays all the taxes. Billionaires don't even pay taxes. And billion-dollar multinational companies don't pay taxes.
Well,
and poor people, all they do is out of the system. But small business pays all the taxes and creates all the jobs in this country. And if you've got us all demoralized and scared and frightened and sick to our stomachs and unsure that America is America anymore, we're in big trouble. And we are.
Well, we actually have a billionaire on our panel here. Kevin, do you pay taxes? I mean, look at those French doors and the size of that living room back there.
A billionaire? I'm sorry. I was a billionaire 10 years ago.
Oh.
Can we, get up to date here?
I know. Well, that is quite the living room there. I mean, look at this shack I'm in.
All right. Yeah. It's not even your house. I mean, you share that with a bum, don't you?
See that lamp? That doesn't even work. That's what I'm working with here. You try to turn it on, and it's like, it does a little thing where it flickers and then goes out. It's really pathetic, actually. But I wanted to also, more on Trump. I think we were talking about this off the air. But I mean, I think it's that I haven't really come out to bash Trump either, though. The other admin on my analytical conservative page has. He just despises Trump. I know other people in libertarian circles just hate Trump, and I think that's kind of why I don't want to pile on, and it makes me kind of want to defend Trump to a certain degree.
Listen, Will, the first thing I heard was he'll never run, and I kept saying yes, he is, and he did.
I didn't think he was.
Then they said he'll never file his FEC to show how much money he's worth, and I said he will, and he did. Of course, I knew he would because he emailed me and said, I'm doing it, so I knew that was happening. Then they said he'll never compete, and I said, no, he's going to be the leader, and he is. And
Do you think he knew? Do you think he knew that he was going to do this well?
I knew he was going to do well. I didn't know he'd be a landslide leader.
But do you think he knew? But do you think he knew?
I don't think he knew either. No, I don't think anyone ever knows. I think it's all a crapshoot, and it's great. That's why entrepreneurs are risk takers. You roll the dice and you see what happens. He also didn't know he'd lose Univision, NBC, Macy's, Campers World, the PGA, NASCAR. He had no idea he was going to be hurt so badly on a business side, and I keep arguing that's good because my favorite book of all time is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Napoleon Hill always says the key to success is to burn the bridge behind you so there is no point of return. You've got no choice but to succeed. Donald may have gone into this as a joke to just increase his brand worth and his name, but in the end, he just burned the bridge behind him. He's got no choice but to win now because his businesses are all shattered. So Donald has to be the president of the United States. He's got nothing to go back to except play golf and retire for the rest of your life. So this is the high point of his life if he doesn't win.
Man, speaking of blowback, this show is going to get an awful lot of blowback. I really love it. I do.
Yeah.
We ticked off a lot of libertarians. I feel good about that. You know, we are going to blow back galore. But
on every issue, we got foreign policy, we got economics, really everything.
But
ironically, I was the Libertarian VP nominee.
I know.
On the presidential ticket. I defend libertarians most of the time in the media, and I'm for smaller government, and libertarians are right on most issues. I don't think they're right on immigration and the Muslim issue, and Israel. But other than that, I'm with you. And so, you know, and that's the problem with the Libertarian Party. I'm with you 80% to 90% of the time. You know what that makes me? Your friend, not your enemy. And libertarians need to get that into their psyche. Someone who's with you 80% or more is your buddy, not your enemy.
That's funny because these guys could probably also agree with me. I go to conservative events, and when I'm at these conservative events, oh, that's the libertarian guy. Oh, he's a libertarian. Go to libertarian events. Oh, look, there's the conservative guy. You're too conservative. You're too libertarian. I can't win. So, I mean, I think there's an element that you're doing something right at that point.
Will, you're me, because I get all the same things. So.
I think that's why we got along so well at Freedom Fest there.
Yes.
When we were hanging out, you were talking to the marijuana people, you know, whatever it was, and we're like, oh, you care that much about pot? How about the president circumventing Congress and and throwing checks and balances out the window? And
to me, pot was never an issue. I've never smoked pot in my life. I don't care. It's a freedom issue. People have the right to smoke it. But I wasn't there speaking to them about marijuana. I was there speaking to the marijuana guy about business deals. I was trying to introduce him to people that were raising money for marijuana companies that are legally based in Colorado and Washington. Yeah. So my mind's always about business. You know, I'm with Calvin Coolidge. The business of America is business. Right.
Before we wrap it up, I just want to plug some shows that are coming up. One, Politics After Dark with Rachel Mills tomorrow is it's on at 9:30 p.m. And Jeff Tucker and Scott Horton are on Eye on the Empire. That was yesterday, I think. What's today? Today's Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
Yesterday was Tuesday, September 22nd, so you could find that on the Liberty.me page. It was really good. Also, Grant, do you have anything else to ask Wayne before we sign off? I know you're pretty quiet there for a little while.
Yeah, no, I want to say about Donald Trump. I like that he's in the race and that he's shaking up the whole politically correct field. You know, I'm tired of political correctness and people bouncing around questions, so I'm glad he's there to force candidates to answer questions directly. But he also has the populist rhetoric that I don't like, the big promises and the you read some of his quotes and it's just, I mean, he recently said we're going to look at a lot of things. I mean that. So stuff like that to me that drives me crazy as just politicians. But I like that he's in the race. If it came down to it, I would probably vote for him. But yeah, I don't know if I support him quite yet.
Okay, and let me just, I hate to do this, but I'm going to defend Trump there when he says that we're going to look at a lot of things. And I've watched John Yoo talk about when he came up with the birthright citizenship, he obviously has constitutional scholars around him because they were, and as a student of the Constitution myself, I'm no scholar, but I study it quite in depth. He was absolutely right. And he was excoriated for that. And I saw scholars like John Yoo from Berkeley come out. That guy didn't even come close to the mark. I don't even know what he was talking about. You had Judge Napolitano come out. He was incorrect. Donald Trump got it right with the people he had around him. So when he says we're going to look at things, he has a team around him that know things. Look, I don't agree with everything he says. I don't agree with everything all the candidates say. But, I mean, to a certain degree, you got to look at some things more critically, in my opinion. I don't know. He's the only one to nail birthright citizenship out of all of them. Ted Cruz, who's a constitutional scholar who understands it, didn't necessarily bring it up or talks around it, and he's one of my favorite candidates, too. So where these guys are skirting the issue, he's attacking them head on. So in respect with that.
Can I say one last point?
Go ahead.
I thought it was funny that, that person stood up and said Obama's a Muslim at Trump's event. And the media got so mad at Donald they should have defended that. But nobody pointed out that the guy who defended Obama, John McCain, lost the election. Mm-hmm. That's a loser's mentality. It's not Trump's job to defend Obama, and Obama would never defend Trump. And then who does defend Obama? I thought it was perfect. Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush immediately comes out and comes to the defense of Obama. And I said, so A person in your crowd says something, and it's in Trump's crowd, and Jeb Bush apologizes. Doesn't that just sum up the entire establishment of the GOP?
It's perfect.
A bunch of cowards. They're a bunch of cowards. And so the one guy who doesn't apologize is my guy. Do I always agree with Trump? No. But I love a guy who doesn't feel the need to be a coward and apologize all the time. We got a real man running for president of the United States. God bless Donald Trump.
And let me put a little bit of icing on that cake and ask the whole panel this question: what does Jeb Bush stand for? Does anybody know? What? I don't. Do you guys know?
Fascism.
I don't know what the man these commercials that Trump comes out, Wayne. I don't know if you saw them. The one about you can't sleep at night. Listen to Jeb Bush. It's hilarious.
I thought what's interesting is I'm always talking about energy. You were talking about my book, right? Sum up my book, The Power of Relentless. It's about energy, relentless energy. And Trump has it and Bush doesn't. And I thought it was funny that Trump understands that, and he was making fun of Jeb Bush's energy and saying he puts people asleep. And that's exactly Jeb Bush's problem. It's exactly the problem of most Republicans. They put people to sleep.
And you could say that about the whole establishment. What Trump's getting at is this man stands for nothing. He's up on that stage. There's no passion. He doesn't stand for any issues. He's a self-aggrandizer who wants power. He cares more about power than he does the country. I can't speak to Donald Trump's motivations. I don't really know. There's a lot I don't agree with. Some of the things he says about China economically, I disagree with. A lot of the things he says about China politically, I certainly agree with. But why aren't people attacking Jeb Bush as vociferously? Look at Carly Fiorina. Everyone, she's so great. Have they really looked at her record yet? You know what I mean?
Believe me, they will be. She's about to get hit really hard. The last few days, I've noticed some really big media hits on her record. Just basically her whole career is getting fired as the big shot woman and getting people fired and offshored. So she's getting hit pretty hard herself.
I don't know if you guys heard. She came out with her foreign policy plan, which I loved, by the way. I really liked it. And I think she came out with that yesterday at some institute. I don't know if you guys saw that.
I didn't see it.
It was really good. It was a Reagan-esque policy. She nailed it on foreign policy, I got to say. But Wayne, I know you got to go. We spent an hour with you. I really, really, really appreciate it. I'll be in touch, and I'll send you the link so you can share this on your Facebook page and wherever else.
Make sure everybody knows my website where they can find all my commentaries.
Go ahead.
Everything I'm thinking. Rootforamerica.com. So it's like my last name, ROOT. foramerica.com or the number 4. I've got them both. So it's rootforamerica.com. All my commentaries there. All my videos are there where you can watch what I think on the big hot issues of the day, and more information about my book, The Power of Relentless, which you can get at Amazon or any fine bookstore like Barnes & Noble. And I just wish everybody a great night. Thank all you guys for interacting with me. You were all great guys, and I had a good time. Thanks.
All right.
Thank you very much, sir.
Can they get your books? Can they find your books at your website too? Like
my website explains what the book is about, and then you have a link to go to Amazon. So the place to buy it is Amazon. If the Pope attacks capitalism, I always say, hey, take a tour of Amazon. That's the greatest institution I've ever seen in my life. But one day,
I want to tell people too. Right. You wrote the Ultimate Obama Survival Guide, which was a huge success too.
I did, and that was number one political book in the nation when it came out. Yep. So I've had some nice winners, but Amazon's the place to buy them all. They've taken over the whole book industry. God bless them.
All right, and I'll post a link on my social sites to The Power of Relentless too, so people know where to find it. And thanks again for coming on, Wayne. No problem. Grant and Kevin, thank you so much. And I'll be in touch, Wayne. Thanks again.
Thank you.